I can guess your soil's pH just by looking at it. Amish farming secret revealed. If you're a gardener like me, you know that soil pH is one of those things that can really make or break your garden. Most of us have relied on test strips, lab reports, or all sorts of fancy gadgets to figure out if our soil is slightly acidic, neutral, or alkaline. But what if I told you there's a way to gauge your soil's pH just by looking at it? No test strips, no labs, just your eyes, some experience, and a little know-how passed down by Amish farmers. I first learned this tip growing up near an Amish community. Spending time around people whose lives revolve around the land gave me a perspective I'll never forget. One of the older farmers shared a technique that just blew my mind. He could tell the approximate pH of his soil just by observing it. And after years of practicing it myself, I can tell you, it works surprisingly well. In this article, I'm going to take you step by step through this method, share what to look for, and give you actionable insights that will change how you garden. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned gardener, this skill will become one of the most useful tools in your gardening toolkit. Why soil pH matters. Before we dive into the visual method, let's quickly revisit why pH matters. Soil pH measures how acidic or alkaline your soil is on a scale of 0 to 14, with 7 being neutral. Acidic soils, below 7, can limit the availability of certain nutrients like calcium and magnesium. Alkaline soils, above 7, can restrict nutrients like iron, manganese, and phosphorus. Neutral soils, around 7, provide a balanced environment for most plants to thrive. For gardeners, knowing your soil's pH helps you make smart decisions about what to plant and how to amend the soil. Tomatoes, for example, thrive in slightly acidic soil, around 6 to 6.8, while brassicas prefer more neutral to slightly alkaline conditions. Getting it wrong can mean stunted growth, poor yields, and a lot of frustration. The Amish farmer's secret observing soil. I remember the day clearly. I asked a local Amish farmer how he tested his soil's pH. I expected him to mention strips, chemicals, or lab kits. Instead, he smiled and said, "I just look at it." At first I laughed. Surely he was joking, right? But as he explained, it started to make sense. By observing soil color, texture, and how it reacts when wet, he could estimate the pH within about 1 to 1.5 points on the pH scale. That's enough to make informed decisions about planting and soil amendments. This method isn't meant to replace lab tests entirely. If you need precision, by all means, send a sample to a lab. But for everyday gardening, especially when you're planting vegetables, herbs, or flowers, this observational skill is incredibly useful, and it's fast, free, and surprisingly accurate once you practice. Step 1. Observe the color of your soil. The first clue your soil gives you is its color. Dark soil usually indicates a high presence of organic material. Compost-rich soils tend to be dark brown or even black, and this is a good sign for gardeners. Why does color matter for pH? Organic material acts as a natural buffer. In simple terms, it helps prevent the soil from becoming too acidic or too alkaline. Dark soils are often close to neutral, with pH values generally around 6.5 to 7.5, depending on the underlying native soil. When I first started applying this tip, I'd kneel in my garden and inspect the soil I had been nurturing for years. The darker areas were always the ones that performed best for my tomatoes, peppers, and beans. I didn't need a test strip to know the soil was ready to grow. Step 2 is to feel the texture. Color is only the first clue. The texture of your soil tells you even more about its nature. When you pick up a handful, squeeze it gently, and observe how it behaves, you can start to understand its clay, silt, and sand content, all of which influence pH. Clay-heavy soils tend to be sticky and slippery when wet. If your soil has that dense, almost pottery-like feel, it likely contains lime, which naturally increases alkalinity. Red or gray clay soils often fall into the slightly alkaline range, with pH values between 7.2 and 8.0. On the other hand, sandy soils feel loose, gritty, and fall apart easily. They don't form balls even when moist. This is a sign of acidity, with pH often ranging from 5.0 to 6.5. Sandy soils are common in regions with high mineral content and can be naturally low in nutrients, which is why gardeners often amend them with compost or organic matter. The texture test is especially useful if you're planting crops with specific pH needs. For example, if you want to grow brassicas like cabbage or kale, clay-heavy alkaline soil might require some adjustments before planting. Conversely, root crops like carrots or potatoes prefer sandy, slightly acidic soil for easier root expansion. Step 3 is to consider soil amendments. Once you've assessed color and texture, the next step is to consider what has been added to your soil over time. Organic matter, compost, lime, or other amendments can shift your soil's pH, sometimes dramatically. One of the lessons I learned from the Amish farmer is that soil has a natural tendency. Clay tends to lean alkaline, sandy soil tends to lean acidic, and organic matter pulls soil toward neutral. By observing your soil and knowing its history, you can estimate its natural pH and adjust accordingly. For example, if you have dark, rich soil with lots of compost, your pH is likely near neutral. You can plant most vegetables without worry, but if you have light-colored sandy soil, it's probably acidic, and adding compost can help buffer it toward the ideal range. Step 4 is to test by observation, then confirm. The beauty of this method is its speed. You can walk out into your garden, kneel down, and get a general idea of your soil's pH without any equipment, but to become truly confident, I recommend pairing this method with occasional testing. Every few seasons use a pH test strip or send a soil sample to a lab to see how accurate your observations are. Over time, you'll start noticing patterns. You'll begin to recognize that a certain shade of dark brown always corresponds to a slightly acidic pH, or that sandy soil in a particular part of your garden is reliably around 5.5. Eventually, you'll be able to make planting decisions confidently without relying on kits, just like the Amish farmer taught me. Why does this method work? You might be wondering, why can someone tell pH by looking at soil? It comes down to experience and observation. Soil composition, the balance of clay, sand, silt, and organic matter, affects its color, texture, and moisture retention. All of these factors correlate with pH. The Amish have been farming the same land for generations. They've learned to read subtle signs that most of us would overlook. Soil is alive. It tells a story through its color, smell, and feel. Learning to listen to it with your eyes and hands is a skill every gardener can develop. So, applying this knowledge in your garden, once you can estimate your soil's pH by sight, the possibilities are pretty much endless. You can choose the right crops for your soil without expensive testing. You can make smarter amendments, save money, and see better results. For beginners, start by observing one section of your garden each week. Compare it to soil that has been amended with compost or fertilizer. Take notes and start noticing patterns. For experienced gardeners, use this skill to quickly survey large areas of your garden or farm. It's an invaluable tool for crop rotation, soil management, and planning for seasonal planting. Let me give you a real-life example from my own garden. I wanted to grow root vegetables like carrots and beets, which need loose, well-draining soil. I observed that one bed was darker, clay-heavy, and sticky when wet. Another bed was lighter, sandy, and fell apart in my hand. Based on the texture and color, I estimated that the clay-heavy bed was slightly alkaline and the sandy bed slightly acidic. I added compost to both to improve nutrient content and then planted my crops. Weeks later, the root vegetables thrived in the sandy bed, while the clay bed required a bit more amendment for brassicas. Without even touching a test strip, I had successfully tailored my soil to the crop's needs. Final thoughts: learning to read soil by sight is one of those gardening hacks that feels almost magical at first, but it's grounded in science and experience. It gives you immediate feedback about your soil's condition, helping you make better decisions without costly tests. For me, it changed how I approach gardening. I now spend more time observing, feeling, and understanding my soil. The results speak for themselves: healthier plants, higher yields, and a deeper connection to my garden. Gardening is as much about intuition and observation as it is about technique, and skills like this, passed down through generations of farmers, are worth learning and sharing. If you enjoyed this tip, I encourage you to subscribe to SoilPower for more practical, hands-on gardening advice. Share this article and video with your friends, family, and fellow gardeners so they too can unlock the secrets of the soil. The more we learn from the wisdom of farmers, and from each other, the bigger and stronger our gardens will grow. Remember, your soil is talking. All you have to do is look.